And tonight on the Daily Wrap, yet another Republican has entered the race for the White House, bringing the GOP total to a lucky 13. The president now calling for major policy changes in the way we handle hostage situations here in the U.S. We'll tell you all about it, plus much more. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Joe Concha, along with my co-host, Rick Unger of Sirius XM and Forbes. How are you?
I'm rather well today, as a matter of fact. How are you?
I'm doing outstanding. The green tie is new. I've never seen that.
This one, yeah, well, you know, I like to change it up for TV.
Wow. You're like Madonna, always rebranding yourself.
Absolutely. I get that a lot. I'm like Madonna.
You're like Madonna. One word.
You said that to me once, didn't you, Carl?
No.
Anyway, joining us tonight, the aforementioned Carl Higby is a former Navy SEAL and congressional candidate, and maybe a future candidate. Perhaps we'll dive into that for a little bit. And finally, assistant online editor for Commentary Magazine, Noah Rothman, in his usual position on Wednesdays. He is back. Okay, welcome everybody. Let's get right to the Daily Download. And we're about to hear from Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal. He just got off the stage not too long ago announcing his intention to run for president. Folks, do we have the soundbite of Mr. Jindal?
My name is Bobby Jindal. I am governor of the great state of Louisiana, and I am running for president of the greatest country in the world, the United States of America.
He actually did that in the beginning of the speech. They usually wait 40 minutes in before they do it, but he went right to the big line. So for you keeping score at home, Governor Jindal is the 13th Republican, as we mentioned, and 5th governor to announce his candidacy. Although he won the Louisiana governor's office by big margins in 2007 and 11, his popularity has plummeted in the state, with his approval rating now at, get this, a disturbing 31%. And if you recall, he famously said this at the 2013 RNC retreat.
We've got to stop being the stupid party. And I'm serious, it's time for a new Republican Party that talks like adults. It's time for us to articulate our plans and our visions for America in real terms. It's no secret we had a number of Republicans that damaged the brand this year with offensive and bizarre comments. I'm here to say we've had enough of that.
And that comment came under a lot of fire. Rick, I guess the most basic question is, if you're only at 31% in your state, only 1 in 3 people support you, how can you possibly think of even running for the presidency?
It's actually worse than that. He is less popular in the state of Louisiana than Barack Obama is. The president has a higher score than Bobby Jindal.
Slightly a red state.
Yeah, slightly a red state. So, you know, there's 2 words that come to mind, and I just don't know any other way to sum it up but to say, who cares?
Who cares?
Who cares? Nobody cares about Bobby Jindal. Nobody's going to care. He's got no surprises up his sleeve to offer us. He's another conservative in a certain track that we have many already filling the lane.
Noah wants to respond. I see him almost bursting at the seams. Let me ask you this question and then jump into your point. Is Bobby Jindal really running for vice president?
You know, that's such a hard thing to accuse somebody of running for the presidency of ever doing. I don't think you would ever engage in this kind of a process with that in mind, unless you're, say, running against Hillary Clinton. In which case, well, no, I don't know. I mean, that's kind of a hard thing to suggest, especially since the contention is that because he's really unpopular, he's not going to go anywhere. He's a 2-term governor. They never like you to run for the White House from your home state. They always turn on you in your second term. So governors tend to be kind of unpopular in their second terms. You can point to a lot of other governors who have run for this office who are in their second term, not out of the office, but in their second term, who are pretty unpopular. And
not John Case.
There's definitely a niche that Bobby Jindal can fill.
Do you think it might have anything to do with the fact that his state budget is an absolute unmitigated disaster?
I think that frustrates a lot of liberals, but I don't necessarily.
No, I think it frustrates a lot of people in Louisiana. It does explain his low ratings.
To do with a religious liberties law that frustrated a lot of conservatives. So he's definitely unpopular in his state, as is, for example, Chris Christie, who's also in the 30s in New Jersey. He used to be substantially popular, but he is also running for the presidency. This is what campaigns are for. Campaigns develop.
Carl, how much is enough? How many candidates can the GOP take on this boat?
At this point, I think people are just throwing their hat in the ring because they're like, sure, why not? You know, it's going to help me. I can put it on my resume that I ran for president of the United States.
This is about a LinkedIn page, you think?
I think a large part of some of these people's decision to get in is that.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, why not? You do it. Now you've solidified yourself $100,000 speaking gigs all over the nation, win or lose.
You know, it's kind of a shame. You've got so many of these people who know that they can't win.
Right.
Running. There are some potential GOP candidates out there who could be real players, and they're not going to get near it. People like Governor Engel out of Maryland, who is really a clever guy.
He has some health
and a
problems
successful
right now,
guy. Yeah, but he's going to be okay. I actually know him, and I know he could do this. He would be a great candidate, and yet it's never going to happen because he's too far down the list.
Yeah.
What I want to know is, how does this work itself out? In other words, when you have 13, it's probably going to get to 16, 17 candidates.
Right.
What's going to be the process where you start to eliminate some of these folks? Do we have to wait for the primaries and handle 17 candidates up until then?
Well, yeah, no shortage of ink has been spilt on how to winnow down this field, and it's going to be difficult for me to summarize all of them right now, and
Sure.
I probably won't be able to do that, so I won't. But what you should probably rely on is the polls. And a lot of people have a real frustration with that, but this is a meritocracy. It's not that this isn't a lottery. You don't get to pick out of a hat and run for the presidency. You do have a certain amount of name recognition that you have to generate, and in order to run for this of a position, that's what you have to do in order to select
But
who's
outside
going
of
to be in
Duck Dynasty, Bobby Jindal doesn't have that.
He has been on the show, though.
He's been on the show.
Yeah, there you go.
Right, but we're in the middle of the campaign, right? So, for example, the GOP right now is struggling with how to deal with the Donald Trump problem. They don't want Donald Trump to get on that debate stage. And they're devising all these weird ways in order to single him out to make sure he's not on the stage. The only way to do is to get him talking. Make sure that he talks himself out of this race.
He seems to be talking himself into this race, so that's the amazing thing. If you at least look at the New Hampshire poll where he's running second right now. Anyway, we do have to move on. Let's switch now to a possible VP pick. Speaking of VP picks, today on the Hill, South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley got some positive press, as she should, from various political consultants, regarding her handling of the Confederate flag issue following the Charleston church massacre last week. Newsmax contributor Ford O'Connell suggests that she might be a good VP pick. So let me ask you, Mr. Unger, does Nikki add or subtract from a Republican presidential ticket?
Here's the problem. Under some circumstances, you could see where she might be a good addition. The difficulty is this. For starters, she too has a very serious budget problem down there that's not going to play well. Number two, she actually supported a gas tax in her state, which is not the sort of thing that's going to please the Republican base. And number three, fairly or unfairly, I have no idea, there is a persistent rumor dating back a number of years about her having an affair. She's married. It keeps coming back. Again, I can't tell you if it's fair or unfair, but it's going to dog her.
Hopefully, Carl, it doesn't hurt Hillary Clinton in any capacity.
Well,
Hillary's never been charged with that.
No, I'm saying her spouse, her spouse,
but
you know what I mean. The
Yeah,
fair
and,
stuff
and she
people-
stood by him, you know, what some would say blindly. But anyway, I mean, the Clintons' marriage was never real to begin with, let's be honest. But the real issue here is, I think there's a large majority of people that are a little annoyed about taking down the Confederate flag, because I don't think, a very small number of very outspoken people made this huge stink about it. Let's be honest, if I said I want to take down the gay pride flag, and I was so offended by it, would they take it down? No. A very small minority made that a bigger issue what it was. And Nikki Haley, she buckled to the pressure.
I'm not sure the entire black population of the United States qualifies as a small majority.
It was not the entire black population of the United
Pretty
States.
much.
It wasn't seen as racist 2 weeks ago, though, by a lot. Like, you didn't see
actually,
large
It was
protests.
not true.
heritage. 2
That's-
weeks ago, it was heritage.
That's not true. I got to
was
tell you something.
historical and heritage.
Nobody was screaming about it 2 weeks ago, although it came up a number of years ago when they took it off of the South Carolina
they're
Capitol
less than
and put it on the
13%
thing.
of the population. So
Well, okay.
Anyway,
Yeah.
we have to move on quickly once again because we're still talking presidencies right now. Sorry, Noah.
I wanna
According
do
to
it, Noah.
Politico, New Jersey Governor Chris Christie set to announce his presidency as early as next week. That makes 14. Similar to Jindal, as Rick just mentioned, Christie is getting hammered in the polls in my home state of New Jersey. Only 30% of registered voters surveyed in a poll conducted by Fairleigh Dickinson said they approved of the job that he is doing, while 55% gave him a thumbs down. All right, Noah, quickly, only have 20 seconds. Does it matter how a candidate is polling at home to predict future success? Like Mitt Romney, for instance, wouldn't have won his home state, and yet he got the nomination.
No, it doesn't matter whatsoever. And in fact, if he's going to get any traction, it's going to be with the party elites, with the party brass and the fundraisers, and they actually have a pretty favorable impression of him.
Okay. Well, President Obama is calling for policy changes in the way the U.S. handles hostages. What are those changes? We'll tell you after the break.
I'm updating our hostage policy. I'm making it clear that our top priority is the safe and rapid recovery of American hostages. And to do so, we will use all elements of our national power. I am reaffirming that the United States government will not make concessions, such as paying ransom, to terrorist groups holding American hostages. At the same time, we are clarifying that our policy does not prevent communication with hostage takers by our government, the families of hostages, or third parties who help these families. And, when appropriate, our government may assist these families and private efforts in those communications.
And welcome back to Daily Wrap. I'm Joe Concha, joined by my co-host, Rick Unger, and filling out the panel, Higby Rothman. That was President Obama today. It sounds so much more powerful when you just do the last name.
That was good.
Thank you. That was President Obama today announcing that the federal government will change its policy on negotiating with terrorists. Although the country will not pay ransoms under the new law, individuals will be allowed to pay ransoms without fear of prosecution by the federal government. Previously, friends and family of loved ones held captive, like the family of ISIS captives James Foley, Stephen Sotloff, Peter Kassig, for example, were told that they would be prosecuted if they tried to pay their loved ones' ransoms. Did the president just open a Pandora's box in this relatively benign-looking move, Carl Higby?
Look, if you want to pay ransom for your son or daughter over there, I don't think the federal government should hold you back from it. But that said, with the lifting of the ban to essentially not allow Americans, or allowing Americans to negotiate with terrorists, I think he is opening Pandora's box. I think there's going to be a lot more kidnapping, especially from the Somali region, because there's a lot of American traffic goes through there, and they're going to start looking for ransom, and it's going to create a little bit of a rise there.
Rick, will this inspire ISIS to go down that route more?
Well, you know, I actually agree with a lot of what Carl said.
Weird.
Very weird. But yeah, the only place where I might vary a bit, I do acknowledge the possibility that it could create more kidnappings. It'd be foolish not to. It's the kind of thing we're going to have to wait and see how it plays out. I do think it was absolutely right to remove this threat of criminal penalty for people who are going through such a god-awful time.
Let's bring in Jim Hansen. We'll get Noah's thoughts on it in a moment. Jim, of course, is the Executive Vice President at the Center of Security Policy. Jim, what do you make of this move by the White House?
Well, Barack Obama had to clear up that giant hypocrisy in that he paid ransom for Bo Bergdahl, not just the 5 Taliban guys he released. They paid money through the Qataris to get Bergdahl's release. So the idea that he could then prosecute American families who were doing essentially what he'd already done was a little bit glaring.
Jim, it's Rick Unger. I think that I'm just going to forget your first answer and move on, because that just might be a wonderful shot at the president.
The truth hurts.
It's a shot at the president, but it doesn't answer the question. The substantive question is, do you think that today's move will actually create additional kidnappings, which is the concern?
Oh, of course it will. I mean, there's absolutely no question about that. I mean, it's a question of incentive, market incentives. You could learn this in Business 101. If you can get paid to do something and you remove an illegality from the payment occurring, of course more people are going to do it. So I don't have any qualms at all with people whose family has been ransomed doing whatever they have to do to get their loved one back. They should have at least then counted on jury nullification. If someone had tried to prosecute an American family for getting their loved one home, what jury on earth is going to convict them?
So, Jim, where do you think the biggest opportunity for these terrorists to start taking people hostage and looking for this ransom is?
Planet Earth. I mean, we're everywhere, and so are the bad guys. You know, we rely on the goodwill of far too many people who don't bear us any goodwill. So obviously, all of the hotspots, any place in Africa, any place in the Middle East, any place in South Asia are all going to be bad. But what about Europe? It's not like that couldn't happen in many of the places Americans go to visit in Europe. It opens up, yes, a Pandora's box, and I don't think it was unfair of me to point out that Obama opened it himself.
No, a lot of different opinions on this. Want to hear yours.
Yeah, I don't disagree with actually that last point that Jim makes, and Rick, I think he made a valuable point that the United States did negotiate with terrorists, and as a result they've set a precedent. And now we actually reveal that the United States is going to be facilitating communications with terrorist organizations that have kidnapped Americans. The value is not merely monetary. The value is also in being able to communicate on a bilateral level with the United States government and the administration. It creates a much more dangerous situation for everybody traveling abroad. You now have a target on your back.
If the issue is precedent, then I'm afraid we set that precedent, 20 years ago with the people who took the TWA flight. So I don't quite understand. Fine. So how in the world did it establish a precedent that you now say already existed? You have to actually establish a precedent to establish a precedent.
We now establish policy. Yeah. It's not merely precedent. Now this is policy.
My question, do we still have Jim?
Oh, yes, we do.
My question for Jim, I'm confused, which is often a state of existence for me, I acknowledge. But you started out your answer by saying that you think it will result in more kidnappings, but then later you said, but you're okay with families negotiating to get their loved ones back. That strikes me as inconsistent.
30 seconds, Jim.
It strikes me as extremely American. We make laws and then we reserve the right to do what we think is best and bear the consequences. And if you say there's a law that says I can't pay for my loved one's return and you violate that law, you risk a jury trial.
But we just got rid of that.
American
is that okay? Well, you're right, but we've never prosecuted anybody for it, which is why we got rid of it today.
Well, in that case, then let's hope more people don't have to make that decision because they've been kidnapped, because they can now pay ransom to the kidnappers.
And we'll have to leave it there. Okay, Jim, thanks so much for joining us. You are the Executive Vice President at the Center for Security Policy. Thanks for coming on, joining us from outside of Washington, D.C. tonight.
Pleasure.
Okay, so last word on this, Carl.
Look, I think if you want to pay money for ransom, fine, go ahead, and I don't think any law should hold you back, but that comes to a personal judgment call. I absolutely think that this is going to open it up.
Rick?
Was it me, or did he make no sense whatsoever? I mean, I don't know what I was missing there. I couldn't follow him.
Let's get Jim back on tomorrow night. Maybe we continue the conversation. Yeah. Anyway, should the president apologize for slavery? We'll sort it out for you next, coming up. New York Times. He penned an interesting op-ed recently where he declared that it's time for the U.S. government to apologize for slavery. And what better person to deliver that message than President Obama? He writes, quote, "The first black man to live in the White House, long hesitant about doing anything bold on the color divide, could make one of the most simple and dramatic moves of his presidency. Apologize for the land of the free being at one time the largest slaveholding nation on earth." Egan went on to say on the air with CNN's Don Lemon and explained his reasoning a bit further.
I just think it could be so redemptive and so powerful and so moving. You wouldn't have any hassle from Congress. There'd be pushback from people, of course. But for a man who's the leader of what was once the largest slaveholding nation on earth to say, I apologize for what we did in America's original sin. Other nations have done it. The Vatican has done it.
And Sirius XM radio host Joe Madison, well, he disagrees with Egan.
And let me make something very clear. There is no way that the first African-American president or that the first African-American president should be the first president of the United States of America to apologize for an institution that was based on white supremacy. That should be the next white president.
Well, we want to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think the president should apologize for slavery? Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments, newsmaxtv.com/comments, and let us know. Okay, Rothman, where do you come down on this?
First of all, I want to remark on that remarkably balanced panel, liberal and more liberal.
I like CNN to do that.
Yeah, and then Don Lemon in the middle, really setting the balanced tone there. No, this is a remarkable conversation to be having. It's as though we don't really understand much history. President Bill Clinton apologized for slavery. He even mentions it in this conversation. column, very briefly, he says he apologized for the slave trade while on
when
a
did
trip
this happen? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
1998.
98. Well, it's still
on
not
a trip to Africa. In 2008, the United States House adopted a resolution apologizing for the institution of slavery. Signed it. The president agreed with it. This has been done, and it's been done again. We've had this debate I don't know how many times over the last couple of years. It's very duplicative. For some reason, we want to have it just constantly.
So, Carl, I got a great idea. Maybe we should ask all the Jews to apologize for the Holocaust. Would that make sense as well? I mean, that's what this sounds like.
I'm not sure you could draw that comparison.
That's ridiculous. Why should President Obama have to apologize for that?
I don't think he should, but I still don't know that those
the
two
whole
go
notion
together.
that, and it always is, it becomes a Republican-Democrat issue at the end of the day, and what
what happened in Auschwitz.
Right.
It's never going to totally go away.
A legacy that will persist forever.
but it's over.
It is, but it's still never going to go away. It's part of the culture.
But you look at there's many cries, and I'm not saying from the majority of the black community, but there are many cries very loud from the black community for reparations, for apologies, and it's like, guess what? It happened. Get up, shake it off. Go on with your life.
But the irony here is that this was what I saw from that video anyway, a very Caucasian-looking New York Times columnist who is offering this up. And I just wonder sometimes, Noah, if folks write these sort of columns because they know it'll get them on TV, like it's so out there and so outrageous that
about it.
Probably.
I don't think his column was all that outrageous. I thought it was extremely duplicative.
Okay, forget what I said a moment ago.
Just for clarification, I don't necessarily agree with the suggestion that everybody should just get over this thing. It's not something you can just get over, and culturally, this is something that I don't think any of us will be able to understand. That said, we don't have an honest racial conversation in this country. There are very thorny racial issues that we're afraid to have. We deliver the Washington Post and the New York Times just beatified Hillary Clinton for delivering anodyne pablum to friendly audiences about the nature of
words.
about the nature
What's your problem with that? What's your point?
Those are some SAT words.
They are, and they're appropriate in this instance because she was really obnoxious and boring and not doing anything worth value. Certainly something you would call courageous, but we just bend over to call them courageous because they're just addressing race. It's really silly.
Okay, well, we'll end it on that non-ambiguous note. Coming up next, does a senior advisor in the White House have ties to communism? Does it matter? Stay there. And welcome back to Daily Wrap. We mentioned a new Gallup poll earlier this week that found half Americans would never elect a socialist to be president of the United States. But how would Americans feel about a senior confidant to the president who happens to come from a long line of communists? The conservative watchdog group Judicial Watch has obtained official FBI documentation that shows trusted senior advisor to President Obama, Valerie Jarrett, you've heard of her, comes from a family of communists, including her father, maternal grandfather, and father-in-law. According to FBI files, Jarrett's father, Dr. James Bauman, and her maternal grandfather, Robert Taylor, both have had business partnerships with a paid Soviet agent who later fled to Prague after getting charged with espionage. Jarrett's father was also a member of a communist sympathizing group, the Association of Interns and Medical Students, which has a long history of engaging in un-American activities. It's an odd name to have if you're engaging in that sort of activities. You're an intern and a medical student. Anyway, Judicial Watch also discovered that Jarrett's father-in-law, Vernon Jarrett, has appeared on the FBI Security Index and was actually considered a potential communist saboteur who was assigned to write propaganda for a communist group in Chicago. And if these allegations weren't enough, Judicial Watch acquired records back in 2008 connecting Ms. Jarrett to a string of real estate scandals, including several housing projects operated by convicted felon and Obama fundraiser Tony Rezko. Not to mention her involvement in covering up then Attorney General Eric Holder's involvement in Fast and Furious. Okay, Rick, is this information remotely relevant, or should we be discussing this in further detail?
It's really hard to know where to begin, so I'll just say, what's Rezko got to do with it? Has anybody said he's a communist?
I don't believe so.
I don't think so
Next
either.
week.
So we could, I guess we're doing a laundry list of Valerie Jarrett's greatest hits. But, the fascinating thing, you just gave this whole history, right? Mm-hmm. We started at the beginning by saying that they were communist, or that these files say that. You know what? In that whole history, never does it say that they were communist. They had a communist relationship with somebody who was communist. They this, they that. Never does it say they're a communist. Number one, in this country, we don't do that. Number two, so what if they were? And why is it being discussed with 1 year left in the term? It's all kind of ridiculous, right? Why are they bringing it out now? Valerie Jarrett's been there since day one. Now all of a sudden, it's a big deal that her father had associations with communists.
No, what I want to know is that
I hate to be blamed for things that my family have done in the past.
Sure.
But if it supports my narrative, I will.
I won't.
No, we do preview these things during the break. Sometime you brought up a very interesting point around why the FBI kind of has this documentation in the first place.
Well, I was not familiar with this story, so that was fascinating. And there's 3 different layers to this thing, and I think a lot of that information about her involvement with slumlord extraordinaire Tony Rezko is far more substantial than anything that has to do with her genealogical background. And it's kind of muddying those waters.
Yeah, right.
The United States kept a lot of documentation on individuals who were suspected of being involved with communism or the Soviet International back when this was a significant threat to American national security.
McCarthy.
And to have those documents is not unheard of, but it is deeply disturbing that they would be coming out now. They really are not relevant to Valerie Jarrett personally, and I think it is kind of disturbing that they exist. However, having ties to Soviet agents, maintaining contact with individuals who are recruiting you for Soviet involvement and possibly sabotage, that is absolutely the province of the FBI, and that is absolutely something that they're able and eligible to do, and I don't necessarily think we shouldn't know about that. The fact that they're coming out now is
from
just
what we've said, there's nowhere so far that we're aware of was that the issue. Nowhere are they accused of having been recruited or potentially recruited.
And none of this has to do with Valerie Jarrett today.
So in other words, can I just say, Noah, you agree with me?
I guess
we're going to be engaged before the night's over, folks.
You're killing me.
I mean,
look, fortunately, communism doesn't run in your DNA. It's a choice, and you can be indoctrinated by any of all people around you. And we can make that case about Obama too, because a lot of the people he surrounded himself with were socialist, communists, things like that. But at the end of the day, Rick's right. Sorry.
I'm very proud of you guys. You're taking a very American.
There's a year left.
Now I'm proud of you. I'll get over it soon.
I'll go with this narrative because I like it. It fits what I have to say, and I don't like her anyway. So go ahead, fire away. But I think that there's a year left, and we just need to move on.
I think the part that you brought up about as far as muddying the waters, and Rezko, and then we have communists. It's just a matter of just taking a whole bunch of stuff and just trying to see what sticks and see if it goes from there.
Is that her associations with these communists is just it's a below the belt attack.
And by the way,
whereas that's substantive, and you can just dismiss everything.
No, you're right. And by the way, there have also been accusations hurled her about her relationships as a Muslim because she was born in Iran. Why? Because her father, who's connected with communists allegedly, was over there on a program when they were our friends, running a children's hospital.
Yeah. That's equally slanderous. And it has a lot to do with the very same mentality of being in an international conflict. That,
they're digging.
I
think they're digging on this one.
You guys did good. I like what you had to say. Even you, Higbee.
Wow. Fist bumps and everything,
Fist bump.
Amazing. I just want to be there at the family reunion. They have those a lot on July 4th. I got to be at the Jarrett family reunion. She's born in Iran. Yeah. She's got Putin's going to show up probably. It's
on a horse
be
with no shirt.
On a horse like you did tonight. We got pictures. Anyway, coming up next is potluck time. This is the Daily Wrap. Do not go anywhere. And welcome back to Daily Wrap. Well, before we jump back in, let's jump on board, shall we? Newsmax wants to send one lucky couple on a 7-day Silver Sea cruise to the Caribbean this winter. Obviously, a luxury cruise on the Silver Wind, trip of a lifetime. To win, however, you need to enter our sweepstakes. Visit newsmax.com/sweepstakes to enter. That's newsmax.com/sweepstakes to enter. Noah just asked, can I enter? And I think you can, because you're not an employee or you're a guest, and that's all
I'm
good.
Actually entering right now.
Okay, good. You could bring your entire family of 12 into, the nice luxury cruise.
I think it's just going to be the immediate family this time.
Immediate family? Okay, very good. Anyway, it's potluck time. This part of the show, we go around the table, share our favorite stories of the day. Higby, I believe this is your first potluck.
No, it's not my first potluck.
Okay.
So,
but it's going to be his best.
But it'll be my best. Okay. And mine is, I want to talk about guns.
First potluck of the month, I meant.
Right. For the first potluck of the month. Yeah, of course I want to talk about guns, because the left wasted no time jumping into this and saying, we're going to use this tragedy in South Carolina as an effort to push our gun control. Mm-hmm. And they've been all over the news saying, we want to ban assault rifles. This is why people shouldn't have guns. You don't need assault rifles to hunt. Why is this even being debated? The guy didn't even use an assault rifle.
Right.
So
there weren't a lot of, in other words, you could have the most stringent gun laws around, and it wouldn't have prevented this from happening.
The fact is, it's illegal to kill people, and if making guns illegal will keep them off the street, why don't we do that with heroin and cocaine? Oh, wait, it didn't work.
Rick, you said a couple of shows ago that the ship had sailed, that it would be really hard at this point because there's too many guns on the street already, so even all the laws in the world aren't going to do anything.
Absolutely, and I have to admit, surprised about one thing. I've seen very little about guns. The president spoke about guns the day after, and I kind of take your point in the sense that wasn't really going to go anywhere, but he's kind of between a rock and a hard place. But the ship has sailed. Look, you could outlaw guns, all guns, tomorrow. And you're not getting the 300 million guns that are on the streets off the streets. So we have to take a different approach to this.
Most of which are in my house. So.
No doubt. And I have long argued that we get nowhere on guns in any way, shape, or form until anti-gun people develop some respect for the culture of people who grow up with guns. They're not bad people.
Or how about the civil rights of it?
Right, that's a perfect point. I'll tell you what would have kept a gun out of this guy's hands. Criminalizing, making a felony out of the minor drug charge that he had. But to do that, we would create a whole new class of victims.
You mean because you wouldn't have been able to get a gun?
He wouldn't have been able to get a gun. He would have had a felony on his record.
That's true.
He had a misdemeanor on his record.
But wasn't the gun gifted, though, by his father?
It was.
But
he passed a background check.
Still has to be
so
passed.
You can't politicize background checks.
Right.
He's legally obliged to own a gun, or allowed to own a gun. He just couldn't have it if he had a felony on his record. But in order to do that, we would create a whole new class of nonviolent victims by making them felons who all of a sudden have this record. And we understand that we would victimize a whole bunch of people who don't deserve to be victims. If only the gun control movement would understand that to do that is to victimize a whole bunch of people who don't deserve to be victimized.
But if they've committed felonies, are you really victimizing them?
Yeah.
I'm saying that it's not a felony to have a misdemeanor drug charge.
No, I understand.
And in order to make that a felony, you create a whole bunch of felons
by purposely
who don't deserve to be felons.
We need to make the point to the left gun-leaning people is like, look, do you need an assault rifle? Well, I want one. I mean, did Rosa Parks need to sit in the front of the bus? No, but it was a civil right to be able to. All right? It is my right to be able to.
How far does that go is the question you're always going to get. Does that mean you have a civil right to own a tank?
If I had enough money, I would buy a tank. Arnold owns one.
He probably does. I think he drives it around LA. I mean,
I entered to win a chance to ride with him.
But there are limits, right? There are limits on what you can't own
explosives like a rocket.
RPG.
Yeah, an RPG is an explosive. I mean, that's a very controlled thing, but I think if I want to own a cannon, guess what? I can own a cannon.
Interesting. A water cannon will do for you. I think that'll be fine.
It'll certainly
actual
do for
cannon
me.
with the fuse and everything. All right, that would be kind of cool. Well, anyway, my turn now on a completely different topic. Tough year for media this year, huh? You had the Rolling Stone UVA scandal. That didn't end very well. Brian Williams is now a breaking news anchor on MSNBC. That might be called a demotion. George Stephanopoulos with all sorts of fun donations to the Clinton Foundation. Then he interviewed the Clinton Foundation attacker, you could call him, I guess, David Schweitzer, who he didn't kind of review. In other words, not a good time to be in media, and as a result, trust in media is at an all-time low. And then you look at stories like this. Media Matters is currently, and Media Matters is an impossibly left-leaning media organization run by a guy named David Brock. And for whatever reason, this organization is tax exempt, 501c3. So here's the deal. David Brock, who runs that organization, writes an op-ed and actually says in it, and we quote, I mean, you can't even make this stuff up, that his role specifically is defending Hillary Clinton from Republican unfair attacks on the subject. That's what Media Matters exists for. The only problem is the rule of being tax exempt says you cannot exist to protect or advocate a political candidate. So, Carl, I'll let you jump in real quick. Should Media Matters be tax exempt?
Absolutely not. The fact is, if you are influencing in any way, shape, or form political change or sway, then you need to be out of the 501c3 arena. And you can have, you know, tax-free status on many things, but
yeah,
that's
incredible. The NFL,
we're out of time, but
NCAA.
there's actually a little more to it.
Sure.
We'll get there.
Time for Yay or Nay next. This is the Daily Wrap. And welcome back to Daily Wrap. It's happy time for Yay or Nay. First up, the Huffington Post. Now reporting that after North Carolina police arrested Dylan Roof last Thursday for a shooting and killing 9 people inside of a Charleston, South Carolina church, they made a food run at a nearby Burger King to get the accused murderer a bite to eat. Are these cops taking their oath to protect and serve a little bit too seriously? Yay or nay, Noah Rothman?
No, I have a hard time understanding what the outrage here is. So you get a full confession and then he gets a meal. I mean, that's not bizarre police behavior.
Yeah, just the Burger King thing. That's kind of like a fun place. I don't know. I wouldn't have fed him anything and let him starve and then I'd lose my job over, so be it. I know I sound like I'm on a soapbox, but it just sounds like such a happy place, Burger King, and I wouldn't have bought this.
Probably worried about getting sued if they didn't feed him.
I am not criticizing the police officers who caught this guy.
Right, exactly.
Good for them.
Good, yep, good, and to all the police officers, I give them a lot of credit.
Yeah, tremendous work. I mean, he was caught within 12 hours, you know, off a tip, right? Off
With that Super Bowl cut, he should be caught.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, good point.
There are those saying that was the real crime, his haircut.
Yeah, the hair. We're all jealous. But anyway, next up, listen to how this sounds. President Darth Vader.
Lord Vader, the fleet has moved out to flight speed and we're preparing to...
You have failed me for the last time, Admiral. Captain Piet.
Yes, my lord.
Make ready to land our troops beyond their energy field, then deploy the fleet so that nothing gets off the system. You are in command now, Admiral Piet.
Thank you, Lord Vader.
That's actually how Rick handles things around here. Just, you know, you don't
Don't
get
mess with me.
Yeah, certain clips aren't available, and
It's gonna be
that's
trouble.
the end of it. But President Vader sounds pretty absurd, right? Well, it might not be as absurd as you think. This, according to the Washington Post poll that looked at the favorability ratings of both fictional and non-fictional candidates. Leading the pack are the Terminator, Vader, the shark from Jaws. I don't know which one. 1, 2, 3, 8. And then, you know, Bernie Sanders and Marco Rubio. There you go. Bernie Sanders actually had the highest favorability rating among non-fictional candidates with 62%. There you see Jaws, I believe. That's from part 2. Good for him, Bernie. And way at the bottom with just 15% favorability rating is the Donald. That's Donald Trump. That's worse than the Harry Potter villain, Lord
Voldemort.
Voldemort. Yeah, never saw the movie. So Vader for president, yay or nay, Rick?
I don't know what to say to that.
You get things done. We have a strong military.
Done, yeah.
Right, fire people.
I'll say nay.
I mean, I think the choking
did blow up a
thing,
planet,
the choking thing takes accountability to a whole new level.
Yeah, good point. No,
I say nay to that ridiculous poll that has not
Thank you.
advanced
Yes.
anything other than silliness.
that may explain, you know, why some people
But better
are
than Trump.
doing better.
Definitely better than Trump.
Okay,
The
very
Vader
good.
administration.
Don't discount Trump.
The
Why-
Vader
I like
administration.
Trump. Is he electable? Probably not, but
He is resonating on some level.
Can we have a contest to do the campaign slogan for Darth Vader? Send in your ideas, folks.
Yeah, send in your ideas.
Send in your ideas.
Yeah, very
Vader
simple.
for president.
Follow me or I'll choke you. I mean, that's basically the way it would go. Anyway, former Alaska governor and hockey mom Sarah Palin no longer works at Fox News. The one-time GOP nominee for vice president will still make appearances from time to time, but will no longer be a paid contributor for the network. Leading me to this question, Noah, as a former Mediaite guy yourself, is Sarah Palin even still relevant, yay or nay?
No, and it's by her own making. You had mentioned just a minute ago that Donald Trump is resonating on some level with the electorate. There is a populist sentiment within the GOP electorate. If she wanted to get back into politics, there's a place for her. I think it's a small place, but there's a place for her.
Okay. Carl,
but no, she's not relevant.
She's relevant, out of relevancy.
Okay.
Who?
Rick? Well, that answers that question. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, the future is upon us. Cue the Back to the Future references, because the luxury car brand Lexus has built a working model of a hoverboard. That's 2015, by the way, Back to the Future 2, so we're actually living that part of that movie. Using liquid nitrogen-cooled superconductors and magnets, the board hovers a ½ inch above the ground. The boards are not for sale just yet, but more information will be available this fall. That's very cool. Will you buy one, Rick Unger?
I would fall off and kill myself, but I think it's awesome.
Oh, please buy one then.
Rick's,
Carl!
Rick's the 1%, so I'm going to have him buy me one. Spread the wealth.
Very good. Noah, last word?
They don't see you writing around on it. Who knows it even works?
Yeah, people can barely handle skateboards. This is going to lead to like 1,000 lawsuits, I think. But, hey, what the hell? Anyway, panel, great job. We appreciate it. Newsmax Prime with J.D. Hayward. That's next.